Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You are listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grit of life. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Noah Filipiak or at noahfilipiak.com/give.
What is up, everybody? Also known as Flipoponymouses, welcome to the Flipside Podcast. This is episode 28. How are you doing? I'm guessing not good. You know, I don't like the question, how are you doing? I once did a rant on it because nobody answers honestly. How you doing? Oh, good. Yeah, I'm like super depressed and sad. But I'm good because I don't want to talk to you about that. Let's just be good all the time. Actually, with COVID-19 and the quarantine and shelter in place and craziness and tons of people losing their jobs, seriously, crazy stuff. I don't mean to make light of it. The medical field working overtime, people that are sick, people that are dying. Maybe people actually will be honest about how they're doing. So when I do ask in that way, how are you actually doing? Last podcast, episode 27, I did a whole episode just dedicated to talking about COVID-19 and what does it look like to find solid ground in the midst of a COVID-19 world. That episode was recorded March 13th. It was kind of just at the beginning of when things were starting to get crazy. Things are crazier now, much crazier. It is bizarre to think. I told my wife yesterday, it feels like it has been months or even years that we've been in the quarantine. It feels like restaurants being open and going to church and movies and normal life. Like that's some sort of movie that happened that we don't live in anymore. It's like we're out of the Matrix now, and it's just very bizarre. And it's only been a couple of weeks. So when I recorded the March 13th episode, it was just as schools in Michigan had been shut down for about a month through spring break. Now we've heard just yesterday schools are going to be closed down for the rest of the year, and just some wild implications to that. And I talk about that a little bit later in the interview that we're going to do today, so I'll talk about that in a moment. But I do just want to check in on how you're doing, and hopefully you have people that are checking in with you on how you're doing, and please be checking in with others on how they're doing. I've been going rollerblading, which is pretty awesome, in my neighborhood, and my daughter hops on her bike. It's been a really cool, just refreshing way to get outside. I played a lot of roller hockey in recent years, not in a few years, but I played a ton of roller hockey over the last 15 years. And so I busted out my skates, and man, it's been a nice stress reliever. It's been a nice way to get outside, get a little exercise, hang out with my daughter. And I hope you have some things like that too. I think getting outside is super important. I know of some friends from church who are doing 8-foot walks with people. You know, let's go on an 8-foot walk. So you go walking with somebody 8 feet apart. Please be doing those sorts of things. Figure out what refreshes you and do those things. Get away from screens if you can. I know I've been doing a lot of screen time because all of our, ministry meetings are on Zoom now, on online platforms. And so I think it's really good to get outside, and it's really good to stay connected with people. So use screens for that, to stay connected with people. Talk to loved ones on FaceTime or Skype or Zoom. We've played some Jackbox.tv games. Those are pretty great. So encourage you to check those out. They do not sponsor the Flip Side. I wish they did. Maybe I could ask. I could reach out about that. But an unsolicited recommendation, try Jackbox.tv. Some cool interactive games you can do with people via video chat, and they're a lot of fun. So hope you're doing some stuff like that. Feel free to reach out. You can always email the show, podcast@beyondthebattle.net, and let me know how you're doing. Even let me know if there's certain topics that you would like me to talk about on the podcast that have to do with the quarantine and COVID-19 and those sorts of things. But if that is something you're thinking a lot about and you haven't listened to episode 27 yet, I would encourage you to go back and do so. In other podcast news, we have been working on Patreon swag, so stay tuned for that. I think by next episode, I will have some fresh Patreon swag. It is very exciting, so excited to show that to you soon. Stay tuned for that. One more thing, and then I will introduce our interview for the day. You know, I think it's official. We've heard that U.S. folks are going to be getting a stimulus from the government, financial stimulus, a check of some kind, a flat rate, and then if you have kids, you get more per kid. And I want to challenge you with something now before this stimulus comes. For some, you need that stimulus, and you've lost your job, you're not able to pay your bills right now, and it's a very, very anxious time. For others, you don't need the stimulus money. And I've just been thinking about what is a Christian response. I don't mean American Christian response. I don't mean a capitalist Christian response. I mean a biblical Christian response. When you read the teachings of Jesus and when you see how the early church treated each other and how church operated, what is a Christian response to knowing you're going to be receiving, 4 digits worth of stimulus money? And if you are in a position where if that money never came, you never heard about it, it never came, you'd be fine. Things would go on. You'd pay your bills. You might have to make it up a little bit later, but you'd be fine. Nothing going on, nothing earth-shattering. If that stimulus comes and you're thinking, oh yeah, this would be a great way to, maybe it's renovations in your house you've been waiting to do, or maybe it's that new 4-wheeler you wanted to buy, or whatever it might be. Those things aren't bad. They're not sinful. I'm not saying they are. But for this season, for this time, I want you to think about all the people who really need that stimulus money. And I'm not setting up a program. I don't know who all those people are, but you do. I want you to think about people in your life that have lost their jobs, people in their lives, in your life, I should say, people neighbors, people from your church, family members, loved ones, and maybe you could reach out. You could reach out to, I know World Relief has some things going on to help refugees. You could reach out to local agencies helping people in your city, local nonprofits, and find the people who need that money if you don't need it. And I believe the Christian response is to not keep that money and not hoard it, but to give it away to people that need it right now. Because this is a unique time. This isn't people have been lazy. People are taking advantage of the system. People didn't go to school, so it's on them that they can't pay their bills. Whatever, maybe legit, maybe usually not, but things we say about people that are in need. Man, people are just in need right now. There's stuff outside of everybody's control, and there's some real stress out there. So my challenge to Flipside listeners, the flipoponymousi, is give your stimulus money away. Give it away to somebody or somebodies that needs it, that they really need that stimulus money. And when theirs comes, it'll help for a week or two, and they're going to need some more help. So just think about that. I want you to pray about it. I want you to think about it. If we can mobilize Flipside listeners, and I'll put this up on my blog and social media as well. Spread the word. See if you can get other people to kind of take this challenge. And if you need it, great. Use it. Fantastic. But if you don't, consider giving part or all of it away to somebody that does. So take that challenge. It's a time-sensitive challenge. Today's April 1st as I give that out. So if you're listening over the next few weeks, consider stepping up and doing that. So next, I want to tell you about our interview for the day. So I am interviewing Brooks Hall, and I do set this up with him in the interview itself. But I was a nerdy sophomore at Troy High School in Troy, Ohio. Troy it's a pretty big high school, Division I. And Brooks is 2 years ahead of me, senior. I was a sophomore, and he won Mr. Ohio basketball. What that means is he's the best player in the state, in all of Ohio. If you go through that list on Wikipedia, it's the award LeBron James won in high school, right? This is there's many NBA players on this list. This is a huge, huge award. And man, Brooks was so good. I went to every game. It was so fun, and I got dressed up and wore a red wig and a cape with some of my other friends. And I mean, it was awesome to watch Brooks. And in high school, Brooks was untouchable to someone like me. Now, not from his perspective, I mean, and we talk about that in the interview, but from my perspective, I'm already this like insecure, nerdy sort of just, I'm in the middle of the pack somewhere socially. And when someone like Brooks walked by in the halls, it was like, whoa, man, dude, that guy right there, And so we talk about that. And what happened was, I've never talked to Brooks before, right? Obviously, we were 2 years separate in school, ran in very different circles, but definitely followed his career at basketball at University of Dayton. I quickly became a UD fan. Brooks was a 4-year starter, so it was super fun to get to watch him, and their team went to the NCAA tournament 2 years, and so that was pretty great. And it was just earlier this year, I was on Facebook, and sometimes Facebook will, recommend friends, and I saw Brooks on there, and I just thought, I wonder what he's up to nowadays. And I clicked on his name, and it was so cool because on his page, his header image was faith, and there's a picture of the cross. And I'm thinking, is this like legit faith? Is this, I guess a little judgmental on my part, but I want to see a little more. So I'm digging around, and I mean, he's like sharing Jesus with people on his Facebook page and his statuses, and like inviting people to church. And I'm thinking, whoa, like this dude, Holy Spirit's got a hold of this guy's life. This is fantastic. And so I reached out to him. And I just kind of introduced myself of who I was and what I've been up to, and just really wanted to encourage him in his faith that I saw very evident on his page. And he wrote back and he said, yeah, I was raised in church, but never had a relationship with God. I gave my life to Christ a little over a year ago, and it was the best decision I've ever made. It's like, man, that is an amazing work of God and an amazing story that I want to share with you guys today. So we will cover much of Brooks' story and some of his bio in the interview itself. But let me start by reading his bio. He graduated from Troy High School in 1999. He was the 1999 Mr. Basketball for the best player in Ohio. He was a 4-year starter at the University of Dayton, 1999 through 2003. He made the Atlantic 10 freshman team. So Atlantic 10 is Dayton's conference, like you'd have the Big 10 or the Big 12. So he made he made the Atlantic 10 all freshman team. He was 3-year all league. That is a big deal. From 2003 to 2008, he played pro ball, and he also worked in the social work field after basketball, working in foster care. And today, he just launched the Brooks Hall Basketball Consulting business company. And I don't know if it's business or company. Sorry, Brooks. His LLC. The website is brookshallbc.com. And we'll talk about more of what that is in the interview. So thank you for listening. Welcome. And let's turn it over to Brooks Hall. All right, Brooks, thank you so much for joining the Flip Side today.
Man, I appreciate you having me. Excited to be here.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, man, this was supposed to be our March Madness edition of the Flip Side. When you and I talked a few months ago, and I have some listeners on here that are sports fans because I'm a sports fan, but this is not a sports podcast. So I always try to give a little context when I go to talk about sports. For people that don't follow sports. But when we talked a few months ago, University of Dayton, your alma mater, where you played. They're having an amazing season. Number 3 in the nation. They're going to be a number 1 seed in the tournament. And I'm just a fan. Like, I'm just a fan. And when I find out that March Madness is canceled, this obviously was early in the COVID-19, at that time.
Yep.
I think every day we were like, what? They're gonna do that? You can only, now I think we're a little more used to it now. But when they canceled or postponed the NBA season, that was huge. And then when they canceled March Madness, to me it was like a funeral. I lost something. But I'm just a fan. I'm just a guy, and I'm wondering if you can, in all seriousness, talk about, because you still live in the Dayton area, and I imagine you're pretty well connected with the fan base still in Dayton. What was it like, first of all, for Dayton to have the season they had? So for non-sports fans, Dayton is not University of North Carolina. They're not Kansas or Duke. They don't normally have these types of seasons. So what was this season like, and what were people feeling going into the tournament? And then what was the emotions like when you guys found out that March Madness was canceled?
So I was crushed, and I don't know. I'm not even sure if I shared with you. I do the radio, so
nice.
for UD I do the color commentary. So I actually travel with the guys. I've got relationships with several of the players, with the coaches, and so I just, as far as also playing there and still doing radio, man, I'm still emotionally tied to the program, and so when I tell you that we got the news that it was canceled, man, I was crushed, not only as a fan, but also as an ex-player, because this was a special season. And you mentioned it's not Duke, it's not the history that Kansas has, but in Dayton it is. And it literally, Dayton basketball in this area, man. I mean, they averaged 13,000 fans a game. I mean, it top 20 in attendance for I don't even know how many consecutive years. I just say all that to say, like people here live and die with their Dayton basketball, man. They're fanatics. And to have a season like this, you talked a little bit about it. Number 3 in the country. They have a lottery pick. They have a guy that's going to be a top 5 NBA pick, and all over the face of America.
Human highlight reel.
Oh man, that's what he does, man. And the country fell in love with Dayton.
Yeah.
And so, man, it's heartbreaking because they'll probably never duplicate this season. Mm-hmm. The stars fell into place, man. And it's heartbreaking because of so many what ifs, right? I mean, they were a lot of people picked them to win the whole thing. You just never know, man. So it's heartbreaking for everyone involved, coaches, players, and fans.
What has and this is something I did my previous podcast. It was on March 13th, and it was sort of right as it was getting real with COVID-19. It was after March Madness had been canceled, and I think at the time we just found. So my wife is a school teacher, and we had just found out school was going to be canceled, I think, through spring break. So a month off school. All the churches had just canceled. Now that's even crazier. Schools, at least in Michigan, are canceled through the end of the school year. They just called it off. And so everybody's sort of in this adjustment period now in this state, this place that we've never been in. What does that look like, I guess, for you personally, and your connection to the team and the community as well? And for those that don't know, I was reminded of this. I was reading an article about Dayton and March Madness, and I was reminded of the tornadoes that just came through Dayton as well. And I'm up in Michigan now, but was visiting my family over Christmas and we went down into Dayton and drove through some of those areas that are still, they look like the tornado just happened, right? And so the article had talked about Dayton still not recovered, right, from the tornadoes, and then this happened. I guess, what has it been like in the last few weeks as we're getting used to the normal of this quarantine and shelter in place? What does that look like for you and maybe for the Dayton community?
Now, that's a great question, man. And it's been a rough year for Dayton and surrounding areas. You talked about the tornadoes that happened around Memorial Day last year, and they were saying anywhere from 13 to 17 different tornadoes touched down in that time, and just, I mean, absolutely devastated the area. we were blessed that no one lost their lives. I mean, it was just amazing. But and then after that, I don't know if you read about or saw a few months later the shooting downtown. Okay, so there was a mass shooting downtown Oregon district. It's a popular bar district in Dayton, and there was a gunman that came through, and I think 9 people died. He was actually about to walk into some bars, and it could have been a lot worse. Crazy to say, with 9 people losing their lives, but he had a automatic weapon, and it was the reaction of, there was a bouncer that grabbed him, and Dayton police got there within a matter of, I think, 45 seconds from the first call. Wow. Had they taken any longer, I mean, it would have been worse. So, yeah, man, if you get a chance, read about that. It's heartbreaking. But so you had the tornadoes, and a few months later, you had the mass shootings. So I say all that to say this Dayton team, man, was embraced by the community. It was finally something positive for the city. And national media kind of adopted this Dayton basketball team as their media darling, you know, and so for it to end this way, honestly, Noah, it was another heartbreak for the city. Yeah. So just kind of top off a very tough year, basically.
Yeah, it reminds me of what we've lost, you know, in these last couple months. Because honestly, I thought it would be fun as we talked, as we connected. It was about, you know, your story of finding Christ and then it just hit me. I thought, man, March Madness is coming. Talking about the stars aligning in my little world, like in my little corner of the world. I was like, man, March Madness and Brooks played at Dayton, and you know, I saw some of your posts about the team, and I thought, man, we're going to be talking about Dayton making a run. You're like, we're going to be in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. Like, this is going to be hyped, you know? This is going to be awesome. Right. I'm going to be interviewing the color commentator of the radio, you know, like as you're going through all this stuff. And then, you know, obviously now it's like all that's gone. Like, it's just like, it's crazy. And then I've been reminded of what people have lost. Obviously, there's death. Like, people are dying from this virus now, and that is the worst type of loss. But I'm also reminded of, you know, seniors in high school who are losing their whole entire spring sports season. Basketball players who lost their whole state tournament run. And again, people that aren't sports fans might just think, oh, it's just sports. But like, this is like, you get one shot at your senior year. You get one shot to try to make it to, you know, get a college scholarship, or to get your, just to have those memories, and even prom and commencement and all these sorts of things. And I'm reminded of the loss also. And I mentioned this in the last episode, these types of, so the shelter in place and closing down businesses, you know, people that are still working, they're not thinking as much about it. People are losing their jobs. People are losing their income. There's been a lot of loss that has happened with this, and I think it's causing people to think more about God. I think in some ways people might be upset and angry at God, and I think the Psalms allow us that. But I think also it's stripping away some things, you know, in our culture. It's stripping away some things in our lives. That's not a good thing that it's doing that. But in doing that, I feel like people are forced to look to God more, because, man, they got everything else is getting stripped away. Like, this is a time, I don't think there's ever been a time like this, even in history, where this much change has happened, you know, seemingly overnight.
Yeah, no, you make a lot of good points. And I tell you, to go back to you're talking about seniors and the loss of these young people, and it's bigger than sports. You hit on it. You hit on it, man, when you talked about opportunities lost. And we'll get into that a little bit later about what I do kind of for a living. But in a nutshell, what I do is try to help young people get basketball scholarships. Mm-hmm. And so AAU is, and for those that may not know what that is, it's travel basketball that happens from about April to July, through July. And college coaches, there's certain times that college coaches can come out and evaluate these players. And that's how they usually determine if they're going to offer them basketball scholarships. Well, that's on hold right now. Yeah. And for your juniors, this was their last opportunity to be seen, for those that are already on the map to get more exposure, for those that are kind of undiscovered to be discovered.
Yeah.
They lose those opportunities. And people may say, well, that's not a big deal. Well, it is if that's your only means to get to college.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young people academically who won't get accepted because of their grades. They would have needed a basketball scholarship. Financially couldn't afford to. They would have needed a basketball scholarship. Not saying it can't happen, but man, it really lowers the already high or the low odds of getting it. Crazy stat. Let's see, NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3, only 1%, so a total of 4% of all high school basketball players go on to play college at Division 1, 2, or 3 level. It's literally that small of a percentage of people that make it. So it's already hard enough.
Yeah.
So losing exposure opportunity is devastating, man. But so I just want to touch on that a little bit. But to your other point, you make a great point. The one thing that this pandemic has done for us believers, it's forced us to lean on him, and it's also forced us to pay attention to what the Bible says. And we won't get into theology and all that, but a lot of this stuff is in the Bible.
Yeah.
What's going on, and
yeah.
so it's testing our faith.
Yeah.
For those non-believers, it's the main thing it's doing is it's opening the door for a discussion.
Yeah.
You can't help but to even if you're not a believer, God is everywhere. People are talking about it, and that's all God wants is an opportunity.
Yeah.
And this has completely opened the door for at least discussions, as the world kind of is put on hold. And I think that's of course what's going on is not a good thing, but the opportunity to introduce people to him is a major blessing.
Yeah, I agree, and I certainly there's that mystery of with God in a time like this. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody does, but I'm glad that God is more powerful than this stuff, and that He's got me in His hands. It's like I would be terrified to be alone in my own power, my own strength, and to just know that I'm in His hands. I read Psalm 46 in the last episode, just talking about God saying, "Be still and know that I'm God," and there's just that I have peace through this. It's I don't know what I would do without it. I don't know what I would do without it. Yeah,
man. And I'm gonna read something I found, man. It was very powerful. Let me pull this up. I wasn't gonna do this.
Oh, you're good.
Found it, and it says COVID-19 reminds me of who God is. He has shut down the world like a small village, and there's nothing that power or money can do. He will reopen it when his time is right. How powerless man is. We live on borrowed time. Let's worship the Lord. But man, that's deep. Like he literally shut the world down, and there's nothing anybody could do about it.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of reminds you, man, that we serve an awesome and powerful God.
Yeah, and I love what you just read. It's a reminder that we are not as powerful as we think, right? As humans, and I think we often think money and power and success will just get us whatever, give us satisfaction and give us what we need, and we can solve every problem. And this has certainly been a chance, I think, for everybody to reflect on our own finite nature, our own, like we aren't going to live forever. The Bible says we're grass. We're here one day, we're gone the next. And I think it's getting real, for some people. So let me use that to pivot, and let's talk about your story. And I want to go back to high school where, I'll set it up a little bit. From my perspective, your senior year of high school, that was my sophomore year of high school. And, we went to Troy High School, so large Division I high school in Ohio. And, no bones about it. Brooks Hall was at the top of the heap. Especially any sophomore is not going to talk to a senior anyway. That's how high school works, at least at a big high school. You just kind of try to stay out of the way, not get, that's just how it is. But then you got, you're having your senior year of basketball, and man, I'm telling you, like, I was one of the guys. I'd be in the student section. I usually wore a red wig. I have a picture from the Troy paper of me in a red wig. That was my
I need to see that. I
claim
need to
to
see
fame.
it.
I think I'll see if I can dig it out. I think I saved it. See, guys like you were in the paper all the time. I don't know, maybe your mom saved those, but you probably were like, yeah, another day, another picture in the paper.
You know, it's funny, man. I'll let you get back to your story. I have nothing. If I could go back, but I literally kept no memorabilia, no papers, no.
Yeah, man, because it was normal for you. It was normal.
Yeah.
You were
you know what though? But here I am, an old man with nothing to show. All my stuff is collected. So I need grandmas and aunts and uncles to give me stuff.
Yeah, man, you gotta connect with David Fong or one of those old Troy Daily News guys and get him.
Bill Begley.
Bill Begley, man.
Yeah,
he was one of my little league baseball coaches, man. So I'll see if I can dig out my picture of me in the red wig because I think I have it somewhere. And I would go to the games. We'd be in the student section. I mean, it was so fun. We were cheering. And that season for your team, your senior year, you guys were good. There was another player on the team that went up to Wisconsin Green Bay. I mean, this was like, and for Troy, Troy is a good program, but this was it. And so, I'm the guy wearing, and my wig eventually progressed into a cape. I had a red cape, I think, by playoff time, and that. And here you're on top of the world. And I mentioned this in your bio before you came on, but you end up winning Mr. Ohio basketball for Division I, best player in the state. I mean, that's a list of household names of basketball. If you go back through that list, you end up being a 4-year starter at the University of Dayton, all league 3 times. You go to the big dance twice, NCAA tournament, and so you're on top of the world, and you kind of have literally everything from my perspective, the outside perspective looking in.
Right, I got you.
You've got everything that the world has to offer. Not all that's bad, right? But first of all, just start what was it like your senior year? What was it like to be recruited by major programs? What was it like to just from the nerdy sophomore with the wig on's perspective of kind of just you kind of have the world in your hand, and people worshipped you. What was it like to walk around like that your senior year? But because you were still a teenager, I mean, you still have the mind of a teenager, and so what was it like as you look back to think about the amount of attention that you were getting?
That's a great setup, and you made a couple key points by saying the mind of a teenager, right? So now as a 38-year-old man looking back, boy, if I only knew what I know now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But I'm thankful for my journey. But so take you back to my senior year, and actually it was before that. So I got my first couple, which is now normal, what I'm about to say. But I got my first couple of college letters in 8th grade. Mm-hmm. Okay, and now you see 8th graders getting scholarship offers, right? But back then, 8th grade. I mean, I went to 95 to 99 at high school. So 1994. 8th grader. And so back then, man, getting a letter from a college in 8th grade was crazy. It'd be like the equivalent probably of a 5th grader getting a letter now, which is illegal. They can't do that, but it just doesn't happen much.
They would do it if they could.
Yeah, right. So it started, I say that to say, man, it started at a really young age.
Yeah.
And the calls, and I ended up going to Dayton, but Dayton really started recruiting me heavy within the rules back. I don't know, but by 8th grade, I was going to all their games. But then it was probably my freshman year. I think I got my first offer. I don't even remember who it was. And by my sophomore year, I had a ton of offers and traveling all around, getting, visits, unofficial visits. And it burnt me out, actually. Mm-hmm. And so I committed to Dayton really early. I committed to Dayton, I want to say, after my junior year. It was really, really early. So I went into my senior year kind of done with the process. And that's a whole nother podcast we could do about the process. It was overwhelming, to say the least, but I had a very good support system. My family was there, had a very good high school coach that kind of shielded me from a lot of it. And man, I was raised right. My grandfather, and to kind of tie into our interview, my grandfather was a pastor. Mm-hmm. He passed away 5-6 years ago, but he was a pastor. And bishop's district elder. And I mean, he was high up in the Pentecostal denomination, and grew up in the church, man, what you would consider a pew baby. And my mom was a choir director. Uncles was the bass and the drum player. I grew up playing the drums in the church, you know, so I grew up in church. And I'll tie that in a second. So fast forward back to your, you know, you talked about my senior year, the notoriety, the offers. Senior year, man, yeah, it was on top of the world. I would be lying if I said it didn't get to my head. I was trained enough, raised well enough to, on the outside, handle myself humbly, right? Like I wasn't that jerk that would, had you mentioned as a sophomore, kind of not talking to a senior.
Yeah.
Had you come up to me to talk to me, man, I would have treated you just like we were friends forever. Like I was raised that way. But man, inside, man, pride is a sneaky little character, and ego, and so I was a proud guy. I treated people well, but it didn't mean there was a beast being created inside of me.
Yeah.
And man, it led to some bad decisions later on that we can kind of get into. But yeah, man, senior year was awesome. If I could go back, I would do it again from an athletic standpoint, because from a sports perspective, that was my last year of just playing for fun.
Right.
Once you go into college and even some pro ball that I played, it's business, man. And so the love of the game was kind of diminished. But man, I found, I'll let you kind of set it up, but I did not, yes, I grew up in the church, but what I later learned was there's a difference between religion and relationship.
Yeah.
And I was in church, but I did not ever have a relationship with God, and actually just found that about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, that's powerful for people to hear, because I think there's people that they associate going to church. I mean, I'll just be frank. I remember, you know, several of my high school friends, and they'd go to church because their families went to church, but their lives they weren't following Jesus. You know, their lives were very immoral, and that could kind of become the normal, right? The norm for people. I played a season of again, this is I laugh. I make fun of myself because I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to compare. I'm not. I know this is very Bush League. I played a season of semi-pro football back in 2012, and I ended up playing a season, tore my ACL for the third time. Wow. Getting old is rough, man, isn't it?
Yeah. I haven't played a game of pickup ball in about 7 years, man. I'm done.
Right. But so I ended up playing almost a full season, and then I loved it, had a blast. And I stayed on as chaplain for the next 2 years. So for 3 years, I was pastoring these guys, basically. Wow. You know, and adult, semi-pro, you got a lot of guys. A couple guys that played in college. We had a couple Michigan State players on our team. You had other guys who'd never played football, you know, in their life. A lot of guys, I'd say the average guy was a guy who had big dreams, you know, and a lot of rough lives, you know, a lot of rough upbringings, a lot of poverty. And this was kind of their way to keep the dream alive, and, you know, and that sort of thing. But my point is, and it was cool. I mean, I was just a player, and they let me pray before every game, pray before every practice. I was leading Bible studies. I was taking guys out to lunch, sharing the gospel with them. And it was a powerful time. And in that, a lot of guys would say, you know, I'm God-fearing, you know, or you know, I'm a member at this church, and their lives were very, you know, immoral, very much away from God. Not that it's all about morality. I don't mean to think it that way, but, you know, you can just tell when someone like loves Jesus and they're living for Jesus, and then when somebody isn't, but that association with, like, I'm good because I, quote, go to church, or right, I'm good because I went to church. So talk about for you, you know, when you were in high school, let's go back to that teenage brain of yours. Yeah. That teenage brain, when you're in church, you're playing the drums. Did you think, like, I'm good with God at that time?
For sure. Yeah. For sure. And man, there's been a real shift. The shift in teaching is what I would say kind of saved my life when I did come back. I grew up old school, man, Pentecostal, and it was law. Yeah. And it was, you know, and you know how it goes. And it got to the point where it was discouraging. Oh, and everything felt like a sin, and you're going to hell. Every little thing you do, you're going to hell. And it was fear-based.
Yeah.
Now, and mind you, I said this was my grandfather, who I loved to death, right? So, and I'm not downplaying, hell is real. We're not getting all that, but so I'm not, so I'm not saying that's the case, but as a kid, it can be discouraging if you don't understand it, and then feeling judged. A lot of times, man, church folk are the hardest judging people there are. And I say that kind of being silly when I say church folk, but really, man, it's sometimes your own people, right? So the term church hurt would be the best way to describe me. That's a term that Pastor Michael Todd, I've heard him say, and others use. Your church hurt. Somewhere along the line, you got hurt in church, and it caused you to walk away. And so, man, but to your question, though, yes, I thought at the time, just going to church, that's what I have to do, right? Like that's what saves you. I'm going to church, even though my life didn't mirror my claim to faith.
Yeah.
But fast forward, man, I had to go through some things, and like I said, I know we'll get into that, but I went through some things, and when God has a way of getting your attention, right? And he'll prick your heart, prick it. And if you keep ignoring it, he's going to do something drastic to really. So at that point, okay, if you ignore this, it's God trying to get your attention. That's on you. So he'll prick it. And if you ignore those, it's going to be something drastic you're going to have to go through. I mean, it's coming. And that's kind of what happened to me.
Yeah. Well, walk us through that a little bit, because I was wanting to ask, when did that shift happen? And I mean, you went on from high school, and obviously you played at Dayton, and you played pro ball, and I got to have a conversation. It was a private conversation, but it was with a guy who played in the NFL for 10 years, and he was a college All-American. I think he might have been a Pro Bowler as well in the NFL. And he's not a believer, but I had the chance to share the gospel with him, and he's definitely had, I would say, some spiritual awakenings in a certain way. But what he said was, and I asked him about identity, where, like, when you're in the NFL, you're in the NFL, you're a star, people are literally, worshiping you. We just go to these games and it's worship. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I think it's more bad than good. I'm saying it's fine to be a sports fan. That's fine. But we really do worship these athletes. And then, he talked about when his career ended. It was basically like, I was a free agent. Nobody wanted me because I was old. Yeah. And he had a team, actually. I forget exactly the details of it. He had a big contract lined up, like his biggest one. And then they backed out at like the last day, and that was it. He never heard from anybody again. And how you go from being worshipped to being just a regular dude, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, man, I still haven't recovered from that. And so I guess what I wanted to ask, I'm guilty of asking like three things at once to you here. I apologize, but when did, for you and your faith, as we were talking, maybe we can get to it eventually. How did that switch happen? And to think about God, differently. But maybe prior to that, what was that identity switch like for you? And did that have anything to do with the eventually coming into this relationship with Jesus?
Man, so it's funny because I completely understand what he's talking about, man, because it's a business. I kind of alluded to it earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like it's What have you done for me lately?
You're a commodity. You're like a product at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's it. What have you done for me lately? What can you do for me moving forward? And if you're not valuable, thank you for your help and good luck to you. I mean, that's kind of how the business works in all sports. So, but man, my journey was a little different in that I'm thankful for my upbringing in church, because although I didn't have a relationship with God, those seeds were still planted.
Yeah.
So I was heavy in the church. I'm talking Sunday, 2 services, Monday choir practice, Thursday Bible study, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then when basketball started to pick up in my early teenage years, I started missing. And then it led to me eventually, parents got divorced somewhere in there. I think I was 12. Ended up going to live with my dad, who who stepped away from church. So it led to me eventually not going to church at all. And I think probably 16, I want to say, is when I kind of stepped away from church and just recently returned in a year and a half. But while I was gone, those seeds that were planted when I was a child were still in me. So when I wasn't living right and making terrible decisions, something in me, which we know, the Holy Spirit, but something in me was telling me, you're tripping, like you get it together. And I remember talking to God often, even when I wasn't in church, because I'm a believer, always have been, but I still didn't make the effort to get to know him. But man, it goes back to being church hurt, right? Like I didn't, it was an excuse, but I didn't want to go back because I'm like, man, all them, it's rules and you can't do this and hell. And if you don't do this, you're going to, I just didn't want to hear all that. Right.
Yeah.
That traumatized me when I was younger.
Yeah.
Okay. So man, I'll give you a crash course version of what happened in my life. So that awesome athlete you described went on to I had a good college career. It should have equaled into a very prosperous pro career. Yeah. But it didn't. And it was bad decision after bad decision. I didn't hire the right agent. I got invited to the NBA Summer League, and there was several teams that wanted me to go. When I didn't get drafted, which I was told I was getting drafted, when that didn't happen, several teams wanted me to come out to try out as a free agent. I picked a bad team to go try out for, and again, I'm flying through this, but there was just bad. Ended up in Mexico, and that didn't end up being a good situation. And it was bad situation after bad situation. I truly believe it was because I didn't use my platform for its intended purpose. You get what I mean? As a believer, God will elevate you and give you a platform, but it's to open doors for conversation, introduce people to him. Yeah. And if you're not doing that and not giving your thanks, and I think things eventually get taken. And I think that's what happened to me. I think that opportunities were blocked because I wasn't taking advantage of my elevation that was happening. And so what happened, man, after what I consider a subpar pro career. Okay. And I'm thankful for those opportunities, man. I don't want to come off as ungrateful. Yeah. Traveled the world. Basketball allowed me to see a lot. I mean, played in Austria, Mexico, been to Spain and Australia. And I've just done things that because of my gift. Yeah. And so I'm thankful for that. But about the age of 27, I actually had a child in college. Okay. My junior year, I had a child. And so that's relevant because by the time I was 27 and bouncing around from team to team, I didn't have a relationship with my daughter because overseas life, you're gone 9 or 10 months a year. You're home maybe 2 months out of the year. So I was missing a lot. I lost my passion for the game and I retired at the age of 27. Well, when I came back, man, here's this guy that was Mr. Basketball and UD standout and pro this and pro that. And here I am at 27 I had a degree in psychology, but if you don't get a master's or continued ed in psychology, undergrad in psychology is useless. So here I am with a psych degree, and where am I going to turn? I ended up working at juvenile detention, my first job after playing. Loved that job, and but man, it was kind of humbling because it's not high paying, and it was kind of it was different. So fast forward a few more years, man. What I didn't throw in there, I was married for 10 years. And here's where I wasn't a good guy. I wasn't a good husband. I let temptation win. And I made a lot of bad decisions, and it ended up leading to divorce. But even that didn't get my attention. It was a couple years later, man, where I lost my kids. Family went through something, and I didn't have a relationship with my kids for a period of time. And that's when that moment hit me that you need to turn to God. And man, it was to the point where it was a really dark time in my life. And I said, God, I'm gonna give you one chance. Imagine me giving God an ultimatum, right? I'm gonna give you one chance, man. I'm gonna go to church this Sunday. And if I don't hear a word from you that I know is from you, then I'm done. Go to church that Sunday, and the message was on hitting rock bottom. God has to strip you of your pride and stuff to get you to be vulnerable and open up to him. And man, that was the day that I said, okay, I hear you.
Hmm.
Last piece. I'm sorry for the long-winded
No,
answer,
it's great.
but last piece to that, man. I'm gonna tell you. Remember, I told you I had that church hurt, that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
When I went back to church, the best thing that happened to me was I realized that grace teaching has now kind of swept the nation. It is now, you get what I'm saying? It's now become, man, it's not that that it's being hidden that hell is real, but it's more focused on God's grace and unmerited favor and mercy.
Yeah.
And that's what I needed to hear.
Yeah. Amen.
You know, that the church is a hospital, man. People think that it's so funny. You'll hear people say, man, I need to get myself together before I go to church.
Right.
You know,
right.
It's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So, man, that was a blessing.
Wow.
Major blessing.
Yeah. Dude, it's awesome because I think of Jesus, you know, because Jesus hung out with the prostitutes and the tax collectors, and the tax collectors were these despised people, you know, the Jews despised them and the Romans despised them. It was like, no, everybody hated them. The people Jesus hung out with, people looked at him and they said, what are you doing? You're supposed to be this religious leader. You don't hang out with people like that. And he just was like, yeah, well, the sick need the doctor, not the healthy, you know. And
exactly.
I came for the sick, and I came to seek and save the lost. And I love hearing, you know, like you said, that message sweeping the nation. I mean, that's God, like, because that's the true gospel. That's the true Jesus. And for anybody listening who has been hurt by church, who's been in a legalistic setting, a setting that says you have to be so good to earn God's approval, and if you're not, we're going to beat you over the head. All those things are things Jesus taught against. Those are all things that Paul's letters in the New Testament, they teach against. And yeah, man, I mean, it's amazing to think about. You are at that rock bottom point. And let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people get to that rock bottom point and they have the grace of Jesus offered to them and they still don't take it. And I have a hard time understanding that. Like, you're at rock bottom. Why would you not take Jesus? So what would you say to somebody that's in that spot right now?
You know, it's a good question. And it's almost like you just kind of alluded to the answer. What's the alternative? Like, you can either have hope and believe in something, believe that there is a higher being, a God that can control the universe and can change your circumstances at any time, or you can just kind of freelance your life and leave it up to chance. Either way, your circumstances are still your circumstances. So why wouldn't you cling on to something that's going to give you faith? Because that's what I just don't understand. When you hit rock bottom and you have somebody trying to offer you the antidote, right? Like, so if you're sick and somebody, if you have cancer and I know that touches so many lives, and somebody said, man, I got the cure for that, like something that could really help you out, would you say, nah, I'm gonna take my chances? Right. Or would you at least, what's the alternative? Like, what can it hurt? You still have cancer.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So
yes.
I don't understand it. So, man, that's what I tell people. Like, what can it hurt to give it a real try, man, and see if God could creep down in the crevice of your heart.
Yeah, man. Well, it's powerful coming from you, honestly, because you achieved a level of success that most people will never achieve, at least in an area of sports or whatever it may be. You achieved a level of, and certainly I know you can look at it and in your world say, well, yeah, but I didn't make the NBA. I wasn't an NBA All-Star, you know. But I think what you achieved, the level of fame, notoriety, success, the level of accolades and attention. These are things people think will save them, right? These are things people think will save them. If I had that, then I'd be good. And they may have never identified that, but they live that way. If they were to look at their life, they would say, no, I think just what am I pursuing? I'm pursuing my paycheck. I'm pursuing success. I'm pursuing, it could be different levels of fame. It doesn't, now that we're older, it may not be that we have these ideas of being a star athlete or star anything, but we still want that success. We want that notoriety, thinking these things will save me. And you've experienced much of that. And I think you're able to look back with wisdom I think about some of the Proverbs in the Bible where, a very wealthy, successful sort of person who's at everything can look back and say, or Ecclesiastes for that matter, nope, that didn't do it. That didn't do it for me. And you're saying,
Sure.
Jesus does it for me, right? Like, I
yeah,
love that.
Yeah, nah, man, I've been through enough. I've been through a lot, man. Like I said, that's a whole nother podcast. Talk about everything I've been, but I've been through a lot, man. And he's just, there's too much evidence that he's real. And there's too much evidence in my life. I'll just speak for me that I don't believe in coincidence, right? Like there's just too many things that have fallen into place. A that affected B, that affected C to get to D. Yeah. Just way too many times that's happened. And again, what's the alternative, right?
Right.
And so I know that I've experienced peace that surpasses understanding.
Right.
I've experienced peace that makes no sense. Like, how are you calm during a pandemic? How are you calm during one of the hardest times of your life, whatever that may be?
Right.
Only God can give you that peace, man.
Right.
But I feel like I do need to say this though. My pastor, who's my uncle, he calls me a babe in Christ, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're an infant in Christ. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect, man. I mess up daily. I still struggle with things, and I still make mistakes. But how nice is it to know that God will forgive you if you can turn to Him and ask for grace and really feel remorse for decisions you're making and striving to be better. God's patient. He understands. And so that's what I'm thankful about, man. I'm not here preaching and trying to get people to you got to be perfect. It's not how this works.
Yeah.
But man, just trying to be better today than you were yesterday and strive to get to know God better. I mean, that's what it's about.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'll add to that, I'm a pastor, and honestly, I mean, it sounds kind of weird maybe, but I've been following Jesus since I was like 4 years old. I mean, that's just, I was following Jesus all through grade school and high school. And for me, I think sometimes people look at my life and think that I must be perfect or something like that. And I every day I have to lean into Jesus to satisfy my sort of deep longings in my heart. You mentioned, and I should have mentioned this earlier when I was talking about people pursuing success and fame and notoriety. But I mean, I wrote a book on sexual purity for guys, and it's just that's because of what I've struggled with, and how many people are in that same boat where they're thinking that relationships with men or relationships with women are going to satisfy, that deep level need, whether they're married or single. Man, that's the biggest god of our culture. That's the biggest idol of our culture is
no doubt
is sex, men, women, like just this idea that can actually satisfy, that can actually validate me and give me the approval that I'm looking for. And I can say only Jesus can give me that approval. And I've been in some dark places. And I write about those, and I try to help others, come out of that. But the only solution to me out of that is Jesus. It's you could be married and have a great wife. She still can't, or a husband if you're a lady, but your spouse still can't give you the deepest validation and approval and love that you need, to be accepted and to be approved. And the next girl isn't going to do it, and the next girl's not going to do it, and the girl on the screen isn't going to do it. And for me, it's a daily struggle as far as going to Jesus to say, make me whole. I don't need a best-selling book to make me whole. I don't need this utopian sex life, or I don't need that girl out there that I see, because all those things, I think they're going to make me whole. And I can truly find my wholeness in Jesus. And I think that's what Paul was getting at when he was like, man, I could be rich, I could be poor, it doesn't matter. I got Jesus. Like, you take it all away from me. You can beat me up, steal all my stuff. I got Jesus. Man, I want that, right? Like, that's,
you know what, man? I'm gonna tell you, man, that's deep. I love that. By the way, I need your book because you're spitting.
I do too.
Listen, man, you're spitting facts and take it from a guy who didn't even make it to the NBA, but was played high level college and traveled the world a little bit. And man, I struggled with sex, man. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
And that's a real struggle with a lot of people, whether people admit it or not. But that's a real struggle. And it is one of them things. But I made some bad decisions along the way. From an athletic standpoint, women throw themselves at you, right?
Right.
And it's hard. It's hard to say no all the time when because feelings of affirmation, right? Feeling good enough, or people telling you how great you look, or just, like, it's just very easy to fall in love with those feelings and the desire to feel needed and wanted, man. And it takes a very strong person. Matter of fact, you can't do it on your own. You can't say you can't 100 out of 100 times say it's impossible without God stepping in and giving you the ability to do that.
Yeah.
But people that don't have a relationship with God and wonder why they keep falling.
Right.
You know, there's a song out, man. Jonathan McReynolds sings it, man. It's called Cycles. And it's a beautiful song, but he talks about that going in the same cycle, man, and relationship, man. So that book that you're speaking about, or your book, man, a lot of people need to grab that book because you're speaking some truth.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'll take that endorsement quote.
I got you.
Yeah, man. No, it's so true, and I think people. We're always looking for ways to save ourselves, even if we don't name it that way. And that's what sexual sin was for me. And it's so common, and the church has got to be talking about it more. And I actually thought about something you said where, like, you can't do it alone. You have to have God's strength behind you, making you whole. And it also reminds me that that's one of the strengths of the church too, or at least it's supposed to be.
Yeah, true.
To just to be in community with other believers and other brothers and sisters in Christ, but particularly in this area for a guy, like, to have other brothers in Christ that I can talk to, I can share my struggles with. They're not going to judge me. They can pray for me. They can keep me accountable. I mean, we need that. Like,
absolutely, man. Absolutely.
We can't do it alone, and our culture tells us you can do it alone, and at the end of the day, you can't.
It's funny you say that, man. That's a great point, and that's the one thing that the New Age church is fighting. It's fighting that even I had of, you know, you got to think, our generation, we remember how church used to be, and it was super judgmental. It just was. And you felt like you had to be, if not perfect, close enough, or people were going to judge you and tell you that you were a terrible person. And again, it's shifted. Teaching has shifted, and it's more welcoming, and exactly what fellowship is so important. Being around, why do you think there's Alcoholics Anonymous, AA groups, and all these support groups that people do, because fellowship is important. What better place, man, to fellowship than to get into group, be able to open up with your brother or your sister, and also realize that, wait a minute, the stuff that I'm dealing with, there's people in the church dealing with this stuff too. Right, exactly. Like, you know how powerful that is?
Yes. Yeah. I got two questions to wrap up. First, tell us about Brooks Hall Basketball Consulting. What made you start doing that, and what is it?
Man, so my I think you might have read my bio, but God gave me a servant's heart. Like, I really love to help people, and that's why I was in social work for 10 years, foster care and juvie and all the different things I did. Yeah. Well, I also coach AAU, and that's that select basketball we're talking about that helps young people get college opportunities. The problem is, man, not everybody anybody can do it. You don't have to have a license. You don't have to have any special certification. You know, any dad, uncle, or grandpa can start up an AAU program. The problem is there are a lot of people out here that don't know the ropes. They didn't go through it. They're not in it for the right reasons. They have bad motives, whatever whatever it may be. So there's a lot of people being misguided or not guided at all. And so that's why I've been helping people for several years, giving advice, trying to help them make good decisions. And by the way, the game is super political. Yeah. If you're not, it's less about your talent nowadays and more about who you run with and who's advocating for you. So sadly, if you're not in the right circles, talented kids get overlooked as well. So this basketball consulting business started because I at least want to be able to be an advocate for talented kids, or even ones that aren't, to at least be able to guide them and give them advice on how best to give themselves a better opportunity to fight against some of those politics that are out of their hands.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I got that info on the show notes for this episode. If anybody wants to connect with you along those lines. And I'm sure right now is a challenging time. We talked about earlier with COVID-19, and that makes your job even harder, but also probably even more needed. I would think as well.
For sure.
So that's awesome. Last question I want to ask you is just, I think now, we're old guys. You're 38, I'm 37. First of all, this is not my last question, but speaking of being old, can you still dunk? That's what everybody wants to know. Can you still? I saw your. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, Hank.
If I stretch for 35, 40 minutes, get a little warm up. Yeah, I got you.
I saw your Facebook picture of when you were playing, and you were saying, you can still got the jumper. But I know, Dwight Howard, he's close to your age, and he was just in the dunk contest. So I'm just wondering,
Come on, man. Dwight Howard is 7. Come on, stop. Don't do that, man. Don't. You know what, man? But so I could dunk, but it's going to be super basic, little wrist dunk, nothing fancy. Matter of fact, I might not even get like a clap. I'll get a golf clap out of it. Yeah.
Well, I think the highest hoop I've ever dunked on is 8 feet, probably. So I don't think I have any room to talk at all. But I think that's what everybody really wanted to know in this interview. So I want to make sure I ask that. But in all seriousness, I think there may be some people listening right now that we went to high school with. There might be some people, just the way Facebook works or social media works, and they might think, man, what's that nerdy Noah Flipiak guy doing talking to Brooks Hall? Like Brooks Hall, man, he was like Mr. Basketball, And man, I think a lot about my friends from high school. I stay in touch with a few of them. I've always had a heart for them to know Jesus. Even in high school, I would try to share my faith with my friends, and I think it's safe to say most of our friends from Troy, from high school, don't know Jesus, and maybe they would listen to something you say rather than something I say, as a pastor or this nerdy kid from high school. And I'm just wondering, I know we've hit a lot of ground, but just on a personal level, if let's say nobody else is listening except a couple of our friends from high school. What would you say to them about Jesus and about the gospel?
Man, he's good, man. God is good, and people say it, but man, he really is. But you can't know what that means if you don't give it a chance, and forget what you've heard from your great grandmas and your uncles and your 60 that grew up in that era, and what you might have thought about church. Try to throw away if you got any fears about how you think the church operates. Give it a try, because like me, I was pleasantly surprised in like I said, the new age teaching, if you will. And it's not that the gospel, it's not that the Bible has changed, just the delivery has changed. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, man, it's about the delivery. And so hearing more about God's grace and forgiveness, it's not a license to sin, but it's you don't have to be perfect. So best thing I could say, man, is give it a chance. Anybody that knew me and knew I was wild out there. So if Brooks is giving God a chance, man, there may be something to this.
Right. That's awesome, man. And I do think, and I hope, we are in our late 30s, and I think when you're in high school or college, you feel like you're invincible. You feel like you live forever. I think they call it a midlife crisis for a reason. I mean, people get to a certain age. I don't know what that age is, late 30s, 40s, maybe 50s. And you kind of look and say, is this all there is? Is this all the world has to offer? And so I give that invitation to our friends who might be listening that, there's no time machine. We're not going back, man. We're not going back to like the, running up and down the court and having your knees not hurt and, trying to strap on the high school football pads again and try to live those glory days. I mean, I think this is a season for people to come to know Jesus. I think it's a season to say, I've kind of experienced what the world has to offer, and I need grace and forgiveness. And that's really all it is. It's just saying Jesus is real. He came to this earth died on the cross, rose from the dead to forgive us of our sins. And he just offers that. Like you said it earlier, it's a gift. It's like the cure for cancer. Like, just try it. Open the gift. I mean, what do you got to lose?
Exactly.
I've experienced it. You've experienced it. And, man, I think that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, man, this is awesome, and I'm so glad you came on. And I got to tell listeners, I have never, ever even imagined that a guest would want to do Noah's Rant with me. Okay, no.
Noah's Rant. Yeah.
You asked me about this when you came on.
That's right.
And I'm saying I don't do Noah's Rant with other people. This is like my time. I go to my crazy space, and I do Noah's Rant with no one around, as if I'm in my own little world. And here you are. You want to witness Noah's Rant, and you want to do Noah's Rant along with me. Is this?
I mean, listen. Hold up. Now, if you kind of talk to me about what you might get into, yeah. I don't have a beef with what you're getting into. All right. I don't want to drop the topic, but if you're going to talk, I want to at least hear it. But I don't have a beef.
All right. What do you have a beef with? Let's start there.
Man, I mean, you know what, man? That's tough, man.
See, I got a beef with everything. It's easy for me.
I have a beef, and it might be too deep. So I know you like to keep that light. My beef is maybe another time you have me on is with parents that like these sports that live through their kids.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. The parents in the stands coaching from the sidelines. But come on, man. Come on.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
Man, I was a little league umpire in like 5th grade. They had 5th graders umping like 2nd graders games, in Troy.
Yeah.
I remember like getting cussed out by parents.
Yep.
Because I was missing like balls and strikes.
See, that would be a fun rant. If you ever do that, man, I'll pop in on the interview at the end. Let me know.
I love it. All right, I'm gonna think about that. I'm gonna let that simmer. I gotta let the internal, the passion simmer, and then I'll add that to the docket. It'll be tributed to you. But
all right, appreciate you.
All right, so I'm gonna cut to Noah's Rant. I think I'm a little too sensitive and vulnerable to have you, in the room, but we'll come back. And man, this has been great. This has been awesome. Love to have you on again sometime, and just appreciate the time, man.
No, I appreciate the invite, man. I had a great time, and respect to what you're doing. Congratulations on the upcoming endeavors.
Thank you.
Yeah, and let's stay in touch.
That was a great conversation with Brooks. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you were encouraged by it. And honestly, if you're listening, if you're a friend of mine or Brooks's from high school, and somehow you picked up this episode and you don't know Jesus, man, reach out to me, reach out to Brooks. We would love to talk to you more about Jesus and just how you're doing in your life. And truly the good news of Jesus, and even the church itself. Maybe you've had bad experiences or you heard really bad things about it, but man, it is a place of support. And if you are just looking for support right now, I'm here for you. I know Brooks is there for you, and Jesus is there for you. And we would love for you to jump into a relationship with him and experience that gift of forgiveness and grace that he offers, that only he can offer, as he died on the cross to take our place for what we deserve, so that we can have eternal life with him now on this earth and be at peace with him in relationship and a real friendship with him, loving him, following him, being loved by him, and also for eternity. Before I move on to Noah's Rant, I will say for theologians in the crowd, and terms are important, but just to clarify, when Brooks was talking about New Age church, he was simply talking about this new movement in the church versus kind of old school church that he grew up in. Old school church being legalism, it's all about if you're doing enough good. And the truth is we can never do enough good. The Bible is clear on that. We can never do enough good. That's the good news of the gospel, is you can't do enough good. And so there's that kind of old model of doing church where you beat people up about all their sin and you're going to hell for everything. And it's a lot of bad news. It's not good news. And when Brooks said New Age church, he didn't mean New Age, if you're thinking of whatever that even is, the if you New Age religion or whatever. He's just talking about the new way of doing church, this sort of movement that's happened that he's experiencing now. It's not a new message, it's the message of the Bible, but the message of grace, and this idea that, man, we don't have to measure up. We could never measure up, and there's so much freedom in that. There's so much freedom in just receiving. Jesus did it for me. Again, Colossians 1:22, it's sort of the theme verse now of the podcast that will be in the Patreon swag, so excited about that. But Colossians 1:22, it just tells us that in Jesus, when God the Father looks at us and all of his holiness and his ability to judge, because he's holy, he sees us and sees that we are holy, that we are without blemish, and we are free from accusation. That's the gospel. When we believe in Jesus, that's what we get. You can't measure up. Jesus measured up for you, and wow, what a message that is. What an awesome message that is. So I just wanted to clarify that, just in case there was any confusion. I thought that would be good. So without further ado, I'll tell you what, Brooks, we got on the call. He's listened to some episodes, which is cool. He's a fan of Noah's Rant. I like to hear that, because sometimes I don't guarantee that everybody is. Your disclaimer here. If you maybe you're a friend of Brooks, and you're listening to the episode for the first time, and maybe you're somebody that you're listening for good, solid content. You want the spiritual impact, you want depth, you want seriousness, you want life-changing stuff. That part of the podcast is over. So you need to stop right now. You need to turn the podcast off. You've been warned. Anything that comes on after this is pure shenanigans, and it's your fault if you keep listening. Don't blame me. You've been warned. Okay, so with that out of the way, Brooks gets on, we're chatting before we start the interview, and he's like, "Man, Noah's Rant, let's do it. Like, we're gonna do it now on the interview," which is what I talked about with him there at the very end. I thought, man, Brooks, I don't know if you know what you're getting into. You get into this kitchen because it's a little hot in this kitchen. When we start cooking up the Noah's Rant. I've never had another person in the kitchen, and who knows when stuff starts flying, and you just might get burned. You might the kettle might blow up. You never know. And so I think he wisely decided after that he didn't want to jump in on this rant, because today's rant, I'm telling you, it's no joke. We're not talking about small, trivial matters here. Noah's Rant is here to make the world a better place, because there's things wrong with this world. You live in it. There's things wrong with this world, and we need to do something about it, and Noah's Rant is here to do something about it. This is not one to mess around. This is not one to joke around and just have somebody else on the Noah's Rant. No. We got some serious business to take care of. Some serious business. I'm talking about. You'll know what I'm talking about here in a second. We're going to get down some serious business, because I got something to rant about today. So without further ado, Noah's Rant.
Noah's Rant.
Okay. It's time. Noah's Rant. You know what I'm ranting about today? Bees. Yeah, you heard me. Bees. Let me tell you something about bees. Yeah, cool, bees. You make honey. Great. Oh, wow. Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Right? You're a bee, and somehow you make honey. I don't even know what. Can I use the word orifice on the podcast? I don't know what orifice that honey comes out of, but it's cool. It's amazing. I like to eat it. I like to buy it. So thank you, bees. So you got this trick you do. Great, good for you. You got this great talent. And here's what I do then. Here's what I do, bees. Not only do you sting people, we're not even talking about that today. What kind of bee knows it's gonna die after it stings you, but it does it anyway? Not very intelligent. You really you got that kind of anger problem, bee? You know that you're gonna die after you sting me, but you do it anyway just because you're so upset? That's a whole nother issue. That's a whole nother podcast episode, bee. But listen, the rant today, the bone I have to pick with you, bee, is you make your honey, you put it on the shelf at the store, and when you go to the store, what does the honey look like? It looks like liquid. Isn't that what honey is? You buy the honey, it's always liquid at the store. Oh, I'll spend the money, my hard-earned money, on that liquidy honey. It's delicious, and I'll take it home, and for a few days, for maybe a few weeks. I'm gonna squirt that liquid honey out of a little teddy bear, the little hole in the top of the teddy bear's head, and I'm gonna put that honey on my oatmeal. I'm going to put that honey on my Cheerios. I'm going to put that honey in my tea. I'm going to mix it in there. It's real nice. Real nice. I've heard honey's healthy. Or at least people say it's healthy that want to eat honey. You can make anything sound healthy if you do enough studies on it. But I've heard it's even healthy. So I'll keep using the honey. This is great. It's a great deal. I paid the money. The bee made the honey. And then I open up my cabinet. Overnight, the honey that is liquid has turned into a solid. It is no longer that golden, liquidy, see-through color. It is now this lightish, kind of looks like boogers, kind of has the consistency of boogers. It's like honey jelly, or it's honey butter. If I wanted honey jelly or honey butter, I would buy honey jelly or honey butter, B. I don't want that. I want honey. So I bought honey. The package says honey, and now I have honey jelly or honey butter after I've already paid for it. Nice trick, B. See, the honey jelly, it doesn't come out of the hole in the top of the bear. And I am cheap. I am not going to buy a new teddy bear of honey. I take the top off of the bear and I stick a butter knife in. You know what happens when you start doing that? You get sticky everywhere. It's like, how did I get sticky on my elbow? How did I get sticky in my hair? Oh yeah, because I opened up the bear's head to get the honey jelly out because the bee messed up when he made it. And now I'm sticky everywhere. And you can't put honey jelly on Cheerios, B. If I wanted a honey sandwich, that'd be cool. I don't want a honey sandwich. I want honey on my Cheerios. So here's the deal, B. Oh, and don't even get... No, I hear what you're saying. You say, heat it up. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm gonna put a plastic bottle in the microwave to heat up my honey so I can get cancer. Thanks, B. You're really rubbing it in now. Your wrath against humanity is coming full circle. Now I get where you're coming from. I'm not going to heat up the honey in the microwave in a plastic jar that is not microwavably safe so that I can get cancer and die. No, that plan will not work. Nor will I boil water so I can stick the jar of honey into it because I do not have 3 hours to prepare my Cheerios. Okay, so back to the rant at hand. B, listen closely. And then we're going to wrap this up. We're going to be real simple, real clear. Stop making honey that turns into honey jelly and honey butter. Nobody wants that. We figured out your plan. We're sick of it. We're sick of you. We want the honey. That's fine. We appreciate that. We are grateful for it. But don't play games with us. Just make the regular honey and have it stay. You never... Has anyone, raise your hand if you've ever seen honey jelly at the store. Nobody has seen. At the store, before you buy it, it is always beautiful. It is always liquid. It is always golden. That's what you buy. It doesn't turn into honey jelly until after you spend $5 on it. And honey's expensive. Man, there's like bee shortages and stuff, whatever that's up, but they're on strike. Honey can be $8. You spend $8 on your honey. You never buy honey jelly. The bees, they make it so it's not until you get home. It's not until 3 weeks later. You can't return honey 3 weeks later. The receipt is expired. You threw the receipt away. The store's not going to take it back anyway because it's honey jelly now. They don't want that back. So B, listen up. We've figured out your plan. We're sick of it. We're sick of it. We're sick of you. Make the honey liquid and make it stay liquid. Stop making it so it turns itself into jelly. That's it. I know you're listening, bees. I know that this podcast has a high following among the bee population. This podcast is big among the bees. I know that. That's why I'm doing the rant. I don't just do the rant to talk about this stuff. I do it to change the world. I do it to change the bees in this case. And I know they're listening. So you're welcome. You're welcome, humanity. You're welcome, humanity. Your honey will not turn into honey jelly anymore because the bees are listening to this episode. And they've heard it. They've heard the truth. They've been exposed. They have no choice but to change. That's it. That wraps up Noah's Rant. I'm telling you, Noah's Rant is here to make the world a better place. And we've done that. Don't you feel good? I feel good. I mean, the world is a bad place, right? I love the opportunity to make it better. Every day you can make the world better. That's what Noah's Rant does. It just makes the world better and better and better and better. So thank you for participating with me in that. I hope you feel good the way I feel good about how we have made the world a better place. And with that, we will wrap up episode 28 of the Flipside Podcast. If you're new, would you subscribe to the podcast? Subscribing is a favorite. It's a favorite. Leave a review. That'd be awesome too. In upcoming episodes, we will be interviewing Todd A. Wilson, author of Mere Sexuality, so stay tuned for that. And also stay tuned for some new Patreon swag. Until next time, see you on the flip side.
The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak is a South Francis Press production. Copyright Noah Filipiak. www.noahfilipiak.com. Theme music by Kyle Lake at K-Lake Music. Used with permission. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or wherever podcasts are found.
Souls needing revivals, what I do? Influence like the cup full of that Bombay. Kelly's to them Tom Hanks, Lexus to them Andres. Hoping they get my inner reverence, stressing for leverage. That they see the king's tracks on the pavement leading to heaven. Yow, dripping in that gold that don't perish. People selling fake, see the green around their belly. Aching refuge in his hand, see his palms, my living quarters. Close them when I'm finished, it's time to bring me closer. There's no purgatory, cause you're in or you're out. When you see him in the clouds, then you know it's going down. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is with your days. Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Tripping upon the premise, see lyrics painting the image, pointing to redemption to the one who got them splinters. Cause that cross is nothing pretty. So why the beauty pageants and caught up in emotions and following your passions? Talking that freedom, all people need them more than the Easter or coffee shop discussions, debating over baristas. Please, sir, this is why we inked up. Even when they do the autopsy, they still see him. Freedom coming quickly. Bars from the spirit. Put it through the preamp and mix it like a chemist. Put it in the airwaves and hoping that they hear it. If there's some confusion, then I hope you see him clearly. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is with your game.